What's up, guys? Welcome to our podcast.
She finally realized that it was all mental. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Yips and Giggles. Anya, what'd you do this weekend?
Oh, just had a lovely snowstorm hit the eastern border of the United States. So that was super fun. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we don't get much snow. And yeah, the entire city kind of went into a panic.
Yep.
Shut down.
Yep.
It actually did end up snowing. Normally when people panic here over the sight of snow, it like one snowflake falls out of the sky and then nothing else happens.
Yeah.
But it actually did snow. I woke up yesterday, like the ground was covered in snow.
Nice.
People still did act like it was the apocalypse and the grocery store shelves were completely empty.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I had a nice little weekend in for myself, and I did want to report back that, since I had so much time on my hands for once, I did some mindfulness that Peyton suggested in 2 episodes ago. I said I was going to report back in the next episode and I forgot, so I apologize. But I did do some mindfulness when I was making my morning tea.
I love it.
And I really just tried to focus on that one task, the smell, the taste of the tea. And I mean, would you know it? I actually feel like I disconnected from my body for a second. It was an out of body experience because I feel like I'm so used to just constantly being on my phone or something, even in the mornings, that I was just standing there without my phone, just sipping my tea. I did end up burning my tongue because I made it too hot. But
hey, that's another sense. I mean,
I know I felt the burn on my tongue. So yeah, it was just a really interesting experience, guys. I do have to say Peyton does know what she's talking about sometimes.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
So to report back, I am a woman of my word and said I would. Better late than never. Am I right?
But it is crazy though. Like it really does take you into the present and quiet your mind. And at the same time, like I was always super bad at, like I would watch Netflix in the morning or like while I'm getting ready, or I would just like, I don't know, scroll through like TikTok while I'm like making breakfast. And I'm just like, I don't need to do this. And then at the same time, you're thinking about all the things you have to do for the day. But I think just doing that, it's not even taking time out of your day because it's a part of a task that you're already going to do. You know what I mean? So that's why I think it's so easy. And yeah, I do highly recommend it. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad it worked a little for you.
Yeah. I am a little bit frustrated with myself that it took me, so long, and the excuse of not having a quote unquote schedule for the weekend, having nothing to do all weekend since we were, snowed in. But yeah, snowed in. Also, we were snowed in, but it was more of an ice storm. Also, I went on a walk yesterday. I almost wiped out. And my hair froze. My hair froze. So that was cool. That was fun.
Nice.
Peyton saw the video evidence of that.
Hey, you're a Jersey gal. You can get through that stuff.
I can. I'm just not as used to it anymore because I have quote unquote lived in New Jersey or in North Carolina since 2018 with college.
That is true. You've been there a while at this point, actually.
Yeah.
You're a Carolina girl.
I'm a North Carolina gal.
You are. Yeah.
Next step is to actually start liking sweet tea, but
we'll
get there at some point.
Hey, we can't be hating on sweet tea.
I'm not hating. I'm just saying my personal preference.
I've got sweet tea withdrawals over here. Okay. We can't be bringing that up.
I didn't mean to rub salt into the wound. But yeah, no, I had no schedule this weekend, which is, completely the opposite of the topic that we're going to discuss today.
Correct.
Which is, just the schedules of various different sports, college and pro. I think we're focusing mostly on pro today. Yeah. And just how, with all these crazy schedules nowadays, player well-being sometimes may take a backseat.
100%.
So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I know. We kind of talked about this a little bit. Like we just kind of dabbled with Alex. For anyone who didn't listen to Our previous episode, we talked with Alex Fitzpatrick. He's on the DP World Tour. And if you don't know, the DP World Tour, they're traveling from country to country every single weekend. He's somewhere different. And even he still doesn't really know how to manage that, which I thought was pretty funny. I thought he would give us a little something like, oh, I try to, make a routine. No, he doesn't know how to handle it yet either, which is...
He does know how to look for colors on the golf course.
He does know how to look for colors on the golf course, which I love. Yeah, watch that episode if you want to know what we're talking about. But I think it is really hard to manage. And I kind of think about it time to time, with Alistair's schedule and, in the Scottish Premiership, there's quite a lot going on. And so for those that don't know, in kind of the soccer, or others will call it football, obviously, for our UK listeners, or anyone outside of the US is going to call it football. But I'm going to say soccer because our US listeners are going to get confused. So for soccer, a lot of the time you'll have your club schedule, right? So that's pretty much just, for example, Alistair plays for Celtic, and that's his club. And so they play about 38 games in a season, and that's just for the club. So that's pretty much, you're not really talking about preseason, which is starting in like June or July, and then you get into regular season, which is August to May. And unfortunately, they got rid of the winter break last year. So at one point, there was a break kind of in the middle of the season where you'd get about a week or two off before you go into, kind of January to May. And unfortunately, they got rid of that in our league. Yeah.
That's nice.
Like Premier League doesn't have a break either. I believe the Bundesliga still has a break, which is nice.
Okay.
Must be nice.
I can't relate.
Yeah, it's funny because looking back when they actually did have the winter break, even if it was only like a week, it was just like, yes, like we can just reset, maybe try and go somewhere warm and just, take a minute, step away from sports for a little bit and then move on. Exactly. Yep. So yeah, that's what that kind of looks like for the club schedule. But then most of the time, if you're a top team in your kind of league, you're also either playing in the Europa League or the Champions League. And so that is another 8 matches minimum. So that's how it kind of starts out. There's 8 in the league phase, and then you get to knockouts, if you get past the league phase. And so that's a whole nother 8 matches on top of the 38, right? But then you're adding in,
so you're telling me there's more.
Then there's always more. Then you get into the international schedule. And
right, that thing. Yeah.
And for those who don't really know what that is, the international schedule is basically when players go play for their country, right? And so that's just basically, it's almost like playing for a whole nother team. And so in season, they have 4 different international breaks. And so September, October, November, they have 6 games total. So 2 in September, 2 in October, 2 in November. Then March, they have another 2 matches. June, they have another 2 matches. So those are kind of the international breaks, right? But I find it funny that they call it an international break because you don't get a break if you're actually playing for the country, for your country. Right. But if you are not playing for your national team, then you do get a break. You do get, maybe like a week off, which is nice. But, if you kind of total all of that together, you're playing like minimum 56 games maybe, which is kind of a lot. But then we're back. But then there's more. Then there's the summer, which you're most likely
what happens over the summer?
Yeah, you're most likely going to be playing in some sort of tournament for, your international squad. So that could be like Copa America, could be Gold Cup, could be the Euros. They've decided to add in the Club World Cup, and that is with your club team. So it's all confusing. There's all sorts of dates, tournaments, things like that. But yeah, I mean, you think about golf, you think about soccer, you think about tennis, and it's just like, when are these people going to get a break?
Like spend some time with their family. Like who cares about their family?
Yeah, who needs them?
Who cares about their physical health and recovery? Like recovery isn't important at all. I mean, honestly, like I don't even know why people even came up with that word.
Who
It's
needs
not a
it?
thing.
No,
Who needs it?
It's just insane. Like I think there was one point where Alistair, I'm pretty sure he went through a period of 2.5 years where he didn't have like a off season, technically off season. I'm not kidding. Because, which probably happens to a lot of players. You're moving from club to club, which they want you to pretty much report as quickly as possible, right? Which I totally understand, totally get that. And then, you're playing in all these summer tournaments that I mentioned, you're playing in all the international stuff. And so, it starts adding up and you look back and you're like, when was the last time I had a week off? Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, that's why you guys had to have your wedding when you did last year, because that was the one date.
Correct.
Literally, guys, literally the one date. I remember sitting there with Peyton. And she was like, yeah, well, we can't do this weekend because Alistair's playing. And then we can't do that weekend because Alistair's playing. And we can't do that day because blah, blah, blah. And this day because we have this other soccer thing. And, okay, here's one date that might work.
No, legitimately.
It was a Sunday.
Legitimately, it was one day out of the next, 4 years.
Yep.
I was like, well, we could wait until we're
work. I say we as if I was in the wedding. I was part of it.
You were. But no, it was just we could wait till we're 30 years old. I don't know. You know what I mean? And
nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But, we had already been engaged for a minute. So we were like, well, we got to find something. But it was a little bit stressful going through that calendar. And we were just like, nope. But
I mean, that's the sacrifices that professional athletes have to make in almost every single sport, I would say. I mean, it's obviously we talked about Alex with the golf and we talked about Alistair with the soccer. Mm-hmm. Tennis is crazy, right? They're traveling all over the world. They have matches, tournaments in every single continent, basically, besides Antarctica.
Imagine that's gonna be next.
And at some point I would not be surprised.
It's gonna be next.
It's a business opportunity, guys. First ever tennis tournament in Antarctica.
Money's always first.
There may not be many spectators, but the viewership will be insane. TV rights.
Oh, 100%.
But for the tennis schedule, I mean, obviously they have these different levels of tournaments on the pro circuit. So there's the Grand Slams and then the quote unquote Masters or the WTA 1000s, depending on whether you're playing on the ATP tour, which is the men's, or the WTA tour, which is the women's. And then the tournaments start going in lesser rank from there. But there's tournaments all over the place. The 4 Grand Slams are in Australia, France, the UK and the US, right? So with Australian Open, Roland Garros or French Open, Wimbledon and US Open. And then in between, you're just hopping around these different tournaments all over the world with the Masters or the WTA 1000s and Indian Wells and Miami. And then you go all the way over to, where's the other ones?
Madrid and Rome, Canada.
Canada. There's
quite literally everywhere,
all over the place. And there's a thing where the higher level tournaments, they're mandatory for the top players, right? So it's not like you can just be like, oh yeah, my schedule's a little hectic. I might just skip this one.
Yeah. You have to have
Dubai tournament.
You have to have either an injury or technically I think you can say that you have a personal matter. I don't know what that specifically entails. Yeah, what the criteria is. Can you say that you need a mental health break or something like that? I'm not sure. I think most of the time people say that they have an injury, but it does kind of worry you to that point of, if somebody really does need a mental health break, are they going to get punished for it? You know what I mean?
Right. And you would hope not, but we're not sure. So the mandatory tournaments for the top 10 players, they must play all 4 of the Grand Slams. So again, Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon, US Open. They must play the 10 1000s tournaments. Yeah. So And this is just listing it off for women. So Doha, Dubai, Indian Wells, Miami, Madrid, Rome, Canada, which alternates between Toronto and Montreal, depending on the year, Cincinnati, Beijing, and Wuhan. So again, hitting a bunch of different continents there. They must include up to 6 WTA 500 level tournaments in their ranking for it to count for their ranking. And then the top 8 players also qualify for the year-end finals. And that's also a mandatory event. So we're doing the math. At least 20 tournaments that you have to play, 21 if you make the finals.
21, yeah.
And these are high-level tournaments. So obviously you're seeing extremely high level of competition, right? Your body's getting beat up week over week. Now they've made some of the 1,000s level tournaments, and I think, 1,000s level tournaments even longer. Obviously allows for more rest and recovery in between matches, but you are at a site for longer, and then you need to travel to the next tournament immediately after, rather than maybe getting some time off in between tournaments. So again, it's an extremely crazy schedule that tennis players have to play. And especially if you're not one of the top 10 players.
Yeah, I was going to say.
You have to go, as you go lower down in the ranks, you have to kind of go all over the place to try to get the points. To get whatever points you can to climb your way up the rankings so that you do maybe have a little bit more set of a schedule to get into those higher level tournaments. And they have tournaments everywhere. They have tournaments in like Tunisia, and then you can go from like Tunisia really to Cancun. Yeah, you can go Tunisia to Cancun.
But like, guys, it's not like you're staying in a resort.
No.
It is like pretty brutal. It is a grind. Yeah. You're not staying where these top 10 players are staying. Let's just leave it at that.
No. So yeah, obviously, like you can imagine, it can be very, very taxing on the body, and then obviously your mental state as well. And it's really easy to hit that point of burnout. But again, if you stop, you're risking or losing out on the opportunity of getting those points and getting, a higher ranking, getting that prize money, right? It's expensive to travel all over the world too. You got to pay for it somehow. So
yeah. And I think the interesting part about the mandatory tournaments is, I think the whole reason they're doing it is so basically they're guaranteeing that those top 10 players are going to be playing those tournaments. So ticket sales go up, TV rights, sponsorships. It's all of those things coming together. It's money, money, money yet again. It's all about the money. And so, like some players have kind of voiced their concern about, having these mandatory tournaments and things like that. And I think there's also been a lot of talk about, match times and when players are finishing at like 3 a.m. and they have to play again at like 10 a.m. You know what I mean? And I think, I feel like when you've gotten to that level, you shouldn't have to worry about those types of things. In the juniors, we dealt with that quite often. It's like, okay, what's the rule now? Is it a 12-hour rule? Is it a 24-hour rule? What's the rule? No one ever actually knew, but you kind of just went with it. I feel like once you get to this level, you just need that optimal level of rest, or else you're not going to be able to, even give the crowd a good match. And so I do think it's interesting how some players are kind of speaking out more now about the match times and things like that. But I think that's interesting in tennis, but there's also, I think it's also interesting. You have kind of a personal connection and, with the NHL, and I wonder how your dad kind of deals with that, as a coach and kind of figuring out the schedule for his team. And for those that don't know, I don't know if I've brought this up before. Have I brought this up before? But Anya's dad is a Stanley Cup champion 3 times. So, and he's also a coach for the New Jersey Devils. And so, he's got a lot of experience with this stuff. So I'm curious if he's ever kind of given you an idea of how he kind of deals with the schedule.
Yeah, so I was actually talking to him on the phone, like literally right before this, about it. But so basically what happens is the NHL sets the schedule for the teams. So in the summer, So the NHL schedule is like from October-ish to April-ish.
Right.
And then if you make the playoffs start at some point in April and can go all the way through June. It's an 82 game schedule, which I think it's turning to 84 within the next couple of years. So money, more games. But the NHL basically sends out the rough draft, the rough version of the schedule in the summer.
Okay.
And the teams all have, a chance to review, and they have a chance to submit back any requests or any concerns back to the NHL. But I think from my understanding is the NHL kind of has the final say on it.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of it does matter or does depend on building availability. So there's other things going on throughout the year, concerts, basketball games. A lot of teams share arenas with basketball teams. And it's also dependent on the schedule of obviously the other teams as well. And like, for example, there could also be like different things that come up. So they had to play in Seattle on Sunday yesterday, and they have a home game on Tuesday. So that's a day in between, right? Okay, well, also the Seattle Seahawks made their conference finals. So they were playing in Seattle the same day. So they had to kind of move their game up in order to avoid the craziness of the Seattle Seahawks game. And then at the same time, there's also a snowstorm going on the East Coast.
Not to mention.
But they still have to get back in time to play their game at home in New Jersey on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't really do much about it because that game has already been set. It's like, if it were up to them, they wouldn't just have one day in between being on the Pacific coast and then playing on the East Coast and having to travel back and recuperate and recover. But I mean, you can't do anything about it, honestly, once the schedule is set, except for like extreme circumstances, obviously.
Yeah, that'd be rough.
But yeah, so I guess like they have a little bit of ability to send back feedback, but at the end of the day, they don't really get that much say in the schedule, from my understanding, at least.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's interesting again, because they play 82 games, which is a lot of games in a pretty physical sport.
Very.
Over the year, and then you got the playoff games if you make it to the playoff as well. So it's all about balance, right? Like, I remember talking to my dad when we were playing tennis in college, and we were just talking about like practices and things like that, and he was mentioning that, when we're in season, we do very, very short practices, like minimal, just for maintenance, because we're just trying to keep our players as fresh and as healthy as we can, like maybe 30, 45 minutes max if we need to. So that's kind of one of the but one of the ways that they try to maximize their players' health during this extremely strenuous stretch of months and traveling all over the place. And it's also interesting when you're, playing in the United States and or Canada compared to, some of maybe the soccer, some of the soccer teams in La Liga, right? Like, it's a small country that you have to travel around versus the US is so big, spans so many time zones. You're like flying a lot of the times and taking these long road trips. So I think it's just different sport by sport, but everyone has their own way that they try to balance things.
Yeah. And I want to get back to that practice stuff you were kind of going into later, but yeah, I agree. Like, I think over here we're pretty lucky in Scotland, because I think the farthest that they travel is like a 3-hour drive. So it's just like, I don't think people over here actually understand, like, if they haven't been to the US, I don't think they truly understand how massive it is and how massive Canada is as well. I remember, when we were back in the MLS, it was just like so much travel that they had to do. And it was interesting after COVID, or like during COVID, whenever all of that happened, which I don't want to relive that, but the MLS, the teams would actually fly after games. So they would charter a flight and fly after. So they started all of that in COVID. They used to do like completely commercial. So I think there's pros and cons to it. Like, I thought it was always fun when you would play somewhere and then you would be able to at least explore the city for the night or go out with your teammates or things like that. And it would almost be like a little bit of a bonding experience. Whereas I feel like whenever Alistair had to fly back from, I mean, God knows where, it'd be like say it was like a 2.5 hour flight. I mean, if you have a night game, you're not getting back till like 3 a.m. and then you're pretty much dead for the rest of your off day, right? Like you don't really want to do anything. And so I think it was really hard on not only the players, but the families as well. Like I can't really imagine, because I'm not living it at the moment, like I can't imagine having kids and having to do that and, being that exhausted and having to, be a dad or for the moms that have to travel, be a mom like that. That would just be so difficult. And I have friends who, this has happened so many times, like an insane amount of times. I've had friends who are pregnant and they're worried about where their husband's going to be like on their due dates. They're like, well, if they win this game, then they might be able to come, but they might have an off day here. They might not. But if the baby comes early, then they're not going to be able to make it. And I'm like, guys, this is once in a lifetime, possibly.
Have you seen all of the Casper Ruud stuff?
Yes.
Because his wife is literally about to give birth any day now.
Yes.
And Casper Ruud is a tennis player.
Are they married?
Obviously the fiance wife.
Oh, is
I'm
it
not
his
sure.
fiance? I don't even know.
I'm not
but
sure.
Yes, I did see that.
She's like about to give birth any day now, and on his on-court interviews, he lost, but during his on-court interviews in the first few rounds, well, he doesn't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
But he did really well in the tournament. He kept being like, yeah, like I'm just waiting for the call any day. Like if I get the call, I'm hopping on a plane and I'm pulling out of this tournament, which 100%. Is like good for you. Yes. Like this is the birth of your child, specifically your first. I mean, every child is important, but like this is the birth of your first child.
Coming from two of the eldest daughters in the family.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure when I was born, my mom went into labor. And I hope I'm telling a true story, but I don't know if I'm like making this up in my head or not. I'm pretty sure I'm not, but I think my dad was in Pittsburgh, maybe. And they had a game and she went into labor like right before the game.
Oh no.
Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or something. So they were away, but he just like left and he made it back in time. So
oh, that's good.
It was good. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, no, it's so ridiculous. Like sometimes, this might be a bit of a hot take, but I'm going to say it anyways. I think it is absolutely ridiculous that we play sports on holidays. I think it's ridiculous. Alistair and I can't do anything for holidays because of the schedule. Like around Christmas, Thanksgiving, he's got games. And so basically it forces our family to travel to us, which is a very long way. And sometimes they just can't do that. But, you think about, NBA plays on Christmas, NFL's really a lot on Thanksgiving. And it's just like, I mean, same with like your dad, right?
Yeah, this past Thanksgiving, actually past two or three Thanksgivings, at least for the past 2 Thanksgivings, they've had a game the Friday after Thanksgiving where they've been away and had to travel. So we've had to make adjustments to our Thanksgiving plans. And even like that's not even on the day, but like even the day after, even around the holiday, it kind of just really messes everything up. Or like he got back really late, like the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, one of the years, and then like had to travel again. So it's just you're home for like a day and then you got to leave, or you're home for like half a day and then you leave. You're not home at all, like, or you are home but you're playing, so you can't really do any of the typical family traditions, celebrations, things like that. But again, I feel like it's just become so normalized that it's definitely. Just like it's part of the job, which yes, it is, but doesn't mean we can't complain about it.
Yeah, it's just like, I just find it kind of sad because You can't be with your family. And at the same time, I know anyone who watches sports would completely, not believe in that take at all. But I mean, the holidays are really for family, and you really should be just around your family, not,
Yeah.
glued to a TV screen. But at the same time, families do make great traditions out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, there's always two sides to something. But yeah, I just wanted to give that hot take for a second and see how people respond to that. Yeah. So I think while we're talking about schedules, I think we should talk about the conference realignment and NCAA.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hot topic, obviously,
Has been for a while. Yeah.
yeah, I think, there's a lot of people for and against, and there's a lot going on, and, so many teams moving to different conferences, and there's not even really a Power 5 anymore. It's pretty much Power 4, Pac-12 has imploded, RIP. So it's just like, it is crazy because you look back and you're like, that wasn't even that long ago that we were playing, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's the Power 5, you know what I mean? And so things happen fast, and it's usually because of money, and that's kind of what's happened here. And I think, on one side, it's benefiting big sports, it's benefiting football, and obviously with the media rights and things like that. But I think there's a lot of consequences for athlete well-being. There's a lot of consequences for the smaller sports, tennis.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, I mean, from a well-being perspective, I just think about the amount of travel that some of these schools are doing now. Like, we've got Stanford, SMU, and Cal that all moved to the ACC in 2024, right? And so, I mean, I looked up a statistic and it said Stanford and Cal's women's basketball teams each traveled over 23,000 miles in their first ACC season. 23,000 miles. I mean, not only the physical health of the players, but I mean, the emotional fatigue that has to come with that is insane. I mean, those are great schools as well, academically and athletically. Mm-hmm. And so you have to think about how much travel they're doing, which, first of all, that's just tightening your muscles even more. You don't have as much time to, focus on school. You're going to be missing way more classes. And also lack of sleep. I mean, you gotta get back. It's just like, I can't.
Time zone changes.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. I remember, obviously we heard, I think, rumors about it towards the end of our time at Wake. And then it might've even been confirmed in the last year or two we were at Wake that, this was going to happen with the ACC, and we were going to get 3 extra teams that weren't on the Atlantic coast. And I remember thinking, like, thank God I'm going to be out of here, because this is going to be, and we already talked about, the schedule of a student athlete in episode 2. Mm-hmm. This is going to make it so much worse for the teams. I mean, it'll be hard for the big teams too, the revenue generating teams too. Mm-hmm. But also, those are the teams that can afford to charter flights and do all these things, versus, again, the smaller teams, tennis, volleyball, taking commercial flights, flying across the country. Instead of missing 2 days of school every other week, we're missing 3 now. Mm-hmm. Battling time zones, playing in unfamiliar environments. And obviously it's really cool to play new teams all the time, but I just wonder about, already with the lack of time that student athletes have, this is going to exacerbate it that much more. And I think it has. Obviously, again, I think it's each person reacts to it differently, but generally, I'm sure it's made it that much harder for student athletes.
Yeah. And I do worry about the non-revenue sports. I think you've already seen cuts being made throughout the country for, the smaller sports. I think even a couple tennis teams have gone down. I think that is something that we need to worry about at this point. And I fear we've gotten to a point where we can't really go back, and it's money over everything. And I worry about that. I worry that we've lost kind of the college spirit I worry that we've lost kind of the reason that you play a college sport. You know what I mean? Like, it was so fun to play for your school and, you know, have that feeling. And I feel like now it's just like, all right, who can make the most money and what teams are going to make the most money, and we're going to put all of our resources into them. And, you know, not sure what's going to happen to the small sports at the end of the day.
And listen, like, I get it. I work in the corporate world. Like, I get it. It's a business. Yeah. Okay. Like, I understand that thought process, but there needs to be a little bit better of a balance between making money, obviously, because you do want to make money, but right. At what expense, right? Like, you want like the smaller sports, you still want them to generate interest and do well and win national championships. And,
right.
You know, it still brings prestige to your school. And these are amazing, amazing athletes. Mm-hmm. So there just needs to be a little bit more of a balance and maybe consultation of other athletes before making these kind right. of big decisions. Like, again, I understand that business wise, it is just money wise, it is a smart decision right. for, you know, these conferences and these big schools and things like that. But sometimes you need to look at the overall picture a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think I also remember reading a story when this started happening where there was a player, I forget which sport, but she had committed to a school in California. I think it was USC, Southern Cal. And one of the big reasons was because her family lived in that area and she wanted to be able to play and to have her family, you know, be able to watch her play at a lot of schools that are nearby.
Yep.
And, you know, now most of their games or matches, I forget what sport again it is, are flying across the country.
Yep.
And like, she can't even, like, only her family can come to, you know, her home matches, and they can't even travel to any away games because traveling to away games involves flying across the country. So,
right. Yeah, it is sad when you look at things like that. And that does matter to players. And that's what I mean by like having that college spirit and being able to, you know, keep that going. And yeah, when you think about like fan engagement and, you know, viewer engagement, I think it is interesting with the MLB because I think they have taken a route where they have actually put kind of fan engagement first, but at the same time, that obviously kind of coincides with, you know, the business of it and with implementing the pitch clock. And so basically how it works is there's a 15-second timer for pitchers with no runners on base and an 18-second timer with runners on base, which it actually was 20 seconds in 2023, but they changed it. They cut it down even more. And there's like a 30-second timer between batters. So I think it is interesting. They are trying to cut down the total time of games now, right? And I think that really is to kind of keep the viewership and, you know, almost like modernizing the sport. And so like, you know, baseball purists might not be very happy with it, but I think there are quite a few fans who are enjoying the shorter games. And, you know, there have been statistics where it talks about, you know, the number of regular season 9-inning games that have been 3 hours or 3.5 hours or longer. And when you look at the stats, it's pretty crazy. So in 2021, there were 391 games that were 3.5 hours or longer. 2022, there was 232. But then when they implemented the pitch clock in 2023, went down to 9, which is
9. Which is insane. Well, that's an efficient strategy.
That's a huge drop. And then 2025, I'm pretty sure it went down to 3. And the average game time was about 2.5 hours. So, you know.
So they cut down a whole hour.
Literally.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, you know, I think it is better when you look at it one way because the games are shorter for players as well. They aren't out there as long. I do have concerns, though, over pitchers' health. And I think
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. Yep. And I think the MLBPA, so the Players Association, initially was a little bit worried about that. And so they were like, hey, like, let's look into this a little bit. And I think honestly, since then, studies have been pretty inconclusive about it, about the pitch clock kind of causing more injuries or not. So I am very interested in the future, how that's going to play out, because I know they're already doing studies about it. So I wonder in, 5-10 years, how that's all going to kind of culminate at the end.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to keep an eye on and watch, because again, you want it to be more entertaining for the fans and more more money generating for, the entities that are behind these things. But at what cost? You also want to keep your athletes around, especially if it's your star athletes, right? Because the whole reason you get all of this revenue generation, TV viewership, ticket sales is because of the stars, right? Yeah. I mean, there's obviously people who are just fans of the sport, right? Fans of the sport. They love to go watch it no matter who's playing it. But I feel like for the average viewer, it's fans of a team or fans of 1, 2, 3 players, right? So like you want to protect your athletes as well and
100%.
Make sure that they're able to compete as much as they can and stay as healthy as long as they can.
Yeah. Well, that's always my question. It's like, do you want to watch your favorite player for a long time or a short time? And I think that's the question that organizations need to consider when they're making these decisions. It's like, okay, well, we could have this person, bow out after 1 year and they're done and nobody wants to watch this team anymore. And that's just kind of how it goes. And so I think that's the question that is not asked often enough. And I think also with, the pitch clock and everything, I'm trying to put it into like a tennis perspective, like how would that affect me mentally if I was given less time in between like points or serves or something like that?
Yeah.
Because what's the number of seconds that you get right now?
25, I believe.
Yeah.
25.
So say that was cut down to like 15. I mean, a lot of people have, between point routines. Like they might go to a towel and now you can, get coaching at certain levels and you have to have time to go do that. And so I think at first, I don't think it would freak me out. But if it got to the point where I was getting warnings for like time violations or things like that, that would get in my head. And I would be like, oh shoot, like I need to serve faster. And then, you're going to be rushed. Your technique might break down. It might just get in your head at that point. You're not even thinking about, your strategy for the next point. So I think it is interesting to look at it from different sporting perspectives and how it could affect players.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And did you know that? So now for the points between seconds, they have the time clock on court, so the players can actually see it counting down.
Yeah,
they used to not have that. They used to not have that, so players would kind of just be guessing how many seconds they had left, which I think also might just, they might think, oh my gosh, this many seconds have gone by. I need to get up to the line and serve. But at least now, exactly how much more time you have, how much more time you can dilly-dally around and recover before playing the next point too. But yeah, if it gets cut down, I would be stressing heavily, especially if I'm tired, might go up to serve with bad form, rush something, land awkwardly, not be fully recovered or not have the right strategy and risk an injury.
Yeah. I also think something that was really funny, now that we're kind of on the topic of tennis again, did you see that Alcaraz had to take off his whoop at the Australian Open?
Yes. I think Sabalenka had to as well.
Yeah, and I think Sinner might have had something too.
Yeah.
Like very similar.
But so the whoop, is it whoop?
Yeah, whoop.
Whoop. Our good old friend, the whoop. Peyton and I are well acquainted. We used to have to wear them at Wake. So the whoop obviously like tracks a lot of different statistics.
Yeah.
Heart rate variance, exertion, things like that. A lot of other stuff that goes into it. And it's approved. It's an approved tracking device, right? Within tennis. So I'm kind of confused why they were asked to remove it.
I don't think anyone actually knows either. Like, and the funny part is on Whoops, there are no like screens like you would have on an Apple Watch.
It's just a band.
Exactly. And so I think it's important to have that because you're learning about your body and how much recovery you need for the next match. It shows you your strain. It shows you your recovery score. It shows you how much you're sleeping. And I mean, that could be some really invaluable information for people that are playing in these slams. So I'm not totally sure why they made them take it off. I'm really confused by that. And he had it, I think Alcaraz had it hidden under his wristband.
Right.
So it wasn't even like visible. I was like, how did y'all spot this?
Yeah.
So I do find that interesting, but yeah, I mean, when we had the whoop, I liked it in the sense that I knew when my body was hurting,
Which was
often, but at the same time, I think people kind of abused the system a little bit and they were like, oh, well, my recovery score is at a 0, so I can't do anything today.
Yeah. It was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy at times.
Yeah.
Is that the right use of that term? I think so.
Sure.
Where, you'd wake up and you see that you got a 20% recovery and then you'd be like, oh man, I feel so bad all day.
Yeah.
Like you convince yourself
it's
that
in
you
your
feel
head.
bad. Even if, obviously if you have a 20% recovery, that's like really bad. But like say you wake up and you feel okay, but then you see 20% and you're like, oh, you know what? Like my head kind of hurts.
Exactly.
I'm really tired.
Everything feels 10 times worse automatically.
Yeah. So it's just like you're playing mind games with yourself. So that's why our coaches would actually turn it off on game days, which I really liked.
Yeah.
So that, you wouldn't wake up and see that, oh, you woke up 17 times throughout the night because you were having a panic attack about the match today.
Exactly.
You woke up and you could kind of just like ignore it and then see it. They would release it after the match. But yeah, for training, sometimes it would be a drawback.
Yeah. But it is very important to pay attention to stress and strain on your body. And I think that's something that needs to be talked about, especially when you are having these schedule changes and players are playing so much. And so you really need to know how your players' bodies are responding to this. For example, those Stanford and Cal teams, how are they responding to this? How are they recovering? Are they getting their sleep? Probably not, because they're traveling 23,000 miles in a season. But so it's important to pay attention to that. And I think, when you think about that, it's important to think about what's called general adaptation syndrome. And so there's basically 3 stages to this. So there's alarm reaction phase, there's resistance development phase, and then there's exhaustion, which is the very important phase. And so the alarm reaction stage, that's pretty much like your initial reaction to a stressor. And so you could think about that as like, when your body's feeling a little stiff or when you have delayed onset muscle soreness that might last, 1 or 2 days. That's kind of how your body's reacting to that first stressor. And then you get to the resistance development, and that's when you're kind of increasing that load and you're actually improving your performance. And so that's kind of the stage where you're heightening that stress just a little bit more, but you're getting to that point where you are adapting, and that's kind of where you are getting those performance enhancements, right? Then there's kind of a caveat to it. So if you keep that stress going, that's when you get into the, some people talk about eustress and distress, and that's when you get to the distress part. That's when you have that prolonged stressor that is no longer helping you, and that's the point where you're getting hurt, you're getting injured, and mentally you are fatigued. And so that's the point that you don't want to get to. And so there's kind of 2 different types of exhaustion that you can think of. There's the overreaching, so that can kind of be temporary, and that's when you do have that fatigue and you do have that decreased performance, but again, it is temporary and you can kind of come back from that. Whereas you have the overtraining syndrome, which is chronic. And so that's when you really are having those aggressive schedules, just like we were talking about. You're having too much stress for a too long amount of time. And that's when you're getting burnout. That's when you're getting fatigue. And that's when you're getting hurt. And so I think it's just very important for coaches, players to be aware that this is happening. And it's probably going to be even harder to kind of adapt and control the stressors because of all of the, things that they have to worry about at this point. The travel, the missing class, it's just, I can't even imagine. I don't even want to think about it. Honestly, I really don't.
No, I mean, yeah, it just sounds like it would be so much to handle all at once. But so is there a way for these players and these coaches who don't really have as much control over the schedule, like kind of like in the situation I was talking about with the NHL, to help player well-being? Like, I know one of the things, again, my dad was talking about was keeping practices light and just, maintenance. Are there any other strategies that could help?
Yeah. I think, again, listen to your players, but I think variability can be very important. So, for example, in tennis, you can't be doing 5 baskets of serves every day. The monotony of that.
Shoulder would fall off.
Exactly. The same motion over and over again. Like, you have to have variability because that's going to help your body adapt better. And it's going to keep from that exhaustion happening and that fatigue from happening. And at the same time, when your dad's talking about practices and things like that, you can also kind of tap into the periodization of things and the planning of things. So you can break it down into kind of progressive stages or training cycles. And so basically what I would do is plan backwards. So look at when your event is, when your game is, when your tournament is, and pay attention to the most important part is paying attention to the volume and the intensity. So when we're looking at volume, we're looking at basically the amount of work that players are doing, right? When you're looking at intensity, that's really the quality of work. And so, people always say like, go 110%. And it's like every practice, I'm like, that's not possible. That's when you get to the exhaustion stage and you hurt yourself. You know what I mean? And so I think to avoid burnout and to avoid that overload, there really needs to be kind of a balance between those stressors, the stress, the adaptations, and the recovery, right? And so if you can kind of think about it in different stages again. So you might have a prep phase, you might have a competitive phase, peak state phase, and then a recovery phase. And so again, let's break it up by intensity and volume. So when you're in like the prep phase, that's kind of when, you don't really have a ton of matches coming up or anything like that. That's when you want low intensity, high volume. So you can be practicing a bit more, longer hours, but you're not quite going as hard as you would later on. Whereas when you get towards the competitive phase, you might be kind of bumping up the intensity, but lowering the volume, right? So that might be, playing practice matches because, you want your players to be kind of in that match mode almost, and you want them to have that intensity on the court and get ready for those matches. So, but at the same time, you don't want to overwork them because you are at that competitive phase. You don't want them, fatigued for those matches. And then you get to the peak state. So that's when you want to be as prepared as possible. You don't want your players to be tired. You want to get rid of that fatigue. But at the same time, you want them to be at their strongest fitness as possible, right? So that would probably be increasing that intensity even more and keeping that volume low. Then the recovery phase is pretty easy. You decrease that intensity, you decrease the volume. So you're taking everything down during that recovery phase. Honestly, just going by those phases can be so helpful, and working backwards and making sure that, you're using progressive overload, you're adding those stressors onto players at the right times so they can adapt and their bodies can adapt. They can mentally adapt, but at the same time, you need to be letting them recover. And I think, with all of the schedule changing and all of that travel, it's going to be important that coaches kind of implement this kind of stuff into their daily practice.
Yeah. And I think for the athletes too, it's important to remember that you need to take breaks.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, especially as a professional, like, you want to put in as much effort as you can, but putting in that effort also means putting in effort into rest and recovery and staying healthy.
Correct.
Right. So be honest with yourself. If you need to take a break, like I'm sure the teams, the teams have optional practices, the teams have recovery options and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And don't feel bad about raising your hand and being like, hey, I need today off, an extra day off. I need this, I need that to make sure that I'm at my best coming up. And also something that I found very helpful when we had our crazy schedules, which again are not as crazy as they are now with the conference changes, is just remembering why we're doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like being grateful, finding things that you have gratitude for. Like, for example, I was extremely grateful to be able to spend all this time with my teammates. I loved spending time with my teammates. And I think just trying to ground yourself in these really stressful times where your schedules are all out of whack. Gratitude is something I've found very, very helpful.
Yeah. Even writing it down every day when you wake up, when you go to bed. It's a great way to, kind of step back and be like, okay, yeah, this is hard, but you're doing something you love,
Yeah.
And so I think that can be really important. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this episode. And, I hope you all enjoyed it, learning about kind of the crazy professional life and kind of ways that you might be able to manage it. And yeah, I think we'll all see you next week, and we really appreciate you listening in.
See ya.